Hey guys, how's it going? Justin here with Practically Squared. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, what I wanted to bring you is our overview on the Supertrickler electronic powder measuring system. For those of you guys unaware, the Supertrickler is the latest and greatest electronic powder measuring system to hit the market. It's been out for, I'd say, about a year now. It's been out there in circulation. And the Supertrickler is something that's really cool. It's really unique. It does some stuff different than everything else on the market, and that's what we're going to cover today. Now, the purpose of today's video is to get you guys up to speed on what the Supertrickler is, who it's for, maybe who it's not for, go over some pros, cons, and share my overall thoughts and feedback, having used it for the past couple months and loaded well over 1,500 rounds with it. So before we get any further, I always feel it's important in YouTube videos to shed any sort of product disclosure or affiliation or anything like that. And it's real quick and simple in this one. There's no product affiliation. I bought and paid for this unit with my own money. I ordered it in October, November timeframe of 2022, and I took delivery the first week of March 2023. Now, in that time frame of me ordering it, Supertrickler decided to make some updates to it and release the version 2 version, and I decided to pay the little bit extra price and get the V2. So I was one of the first people to get the V2 just by kind of happenstance where my order lied. So I got the V2 in the first week of March, and I've been using it ever since then. Before I get too far into it, I think we need to step back and go over the basics. I think we first need to talk about who this unit is for, because I feel like as cool of a unit as it is, it's definitely not for everybody. So first, who it's for. I feel like it's for the long-range rifle shooters who are looking to get optimum, SDs, ESs, optimum ammunition for their ammo. Whether we're talking about just recreational long-range shooters, whether we're talking about guys that just shoot at 100 but like teeny tiny groups, or we're talking about the F-class bench rest, PRS competitors out there. If you're shooting F-class bench rest or PRS, a powder measuring system like this is going to be very crucial, and a lot of guys are going to be using something very similar to this. It's going to be a really good unit for those guys. Now, getting into who this unit's not for, the first thing I would say is it's not for those on a budget. If you're looking to save coin reloading, this is going to be a system that's going to blow your budget out of the water because it's going to be very expensive, as we'll get into later in the video. It's a really unique system. It packs a lot of features, but you're paying for all of those features. Another person that I would say this unit's not for is those that don't like to try brand new things. So I will say the Supertrickler's been being sold for about the last 8 or 9 months on the market, and there's been some demo units out there for probably about the last year or so. So the Supertrickler, I feel pretty comfortable with it. I feel like it doesn't really have too many of those new bugs that oftentimes some products have. However, I did opt to get the V2 version, and I've only had it for a couple months, so I can't entirely say that. What I will say is that the folks over at Supertrickler behind the scenes, they're constantly tweaking this unit, and some people look at that as a negative because it seems like they're always releasing updates for it. But the software updates are just making the unit better and better. And with time, the unit's getting a lot better. But I know there are a lot of guys out there who are reluctant to try it just because it's so new. And I definitely understand that. As far as how the unit actually works, the unit has a bulk throw, a fine throw, and a vibration mode in it. And from my experiences with the powders that I've used, which are Hodgkin Varget, Midori M150, Hodgkin H335, Hodgkin 4350, and we've also used CFE 223. I wanted to try a ball powder in it. I've used all those powders. In my experience, it generally throws, once you get your profile set up a little bit, it'll throw in about 7 to 10 seconds, and it'll overthrow about 1 in every 20, which honestly isn't bad, and it's pretty quick. Even though you do get an overthrow here or there, it's throwing so quickly that I'm willing to accept those. So now that we talked about who it's for and who it's not for, let's give you guys a basic overview of what it is and the features that it packs. So as I said, it's an electronic powder measuring system. It reads to the 0.01 grain, and it has powder profiles that have AI kind of built into it. You could opt to use the AI or not use the AI. But essentially what's going to happen is whenever you set up your profile, it's going to ask you what powder you're using. And the AI is kind of going to learn that powder. And say, for example, you're using Hodgkin Varget. As you use Hodgkin Varget and you have the AI turned on, it's going to optimize it to throw efficiently. It's going to optimize it to throw accurately and throw pretty quickly. And you could choose to use the AI. You could choose to not use the AI. You could choose to use the AI to a certain extent and then kind of tweak it as you will. But what it is it kind of optimizes it, and it's a really nice feature that's packed in there. There is a little bit of a learning curve associated with it, as we'll get into later in the video. Another really cool, nice feature about the unit is that it has a digital touchscreen display. Everything's on there. It gives you tons of information. It'll tell you how quick it threw the charge. It'll tell you, how far over or under it was from what you're looking at. You could go in the back. I mean, it even gives you a time. It has a light up display whenever your charge is to where you want it to be. It'll light up red. It'll also make an audible beep. There's tons of really nice behind the scenes stuff that kind of add up to make a really good package. It also features modes such as ladder mode, which I have a full video talking about, where you could work up a ladder test. It's a pretty compact unit versus something like an Autotrickler V3 or something where you have units off to the side. It's pretty quiet, pretty efficient, and pretty reliable from my experience, albeit I haven't had it that entirely long. It's also self-sufficient, which I feel is another really good feature. It doesn't require any sort of app, which long-term is kind of something that I look at as positive. The Autotrickler systems tend to use apps, and the problem is that works great now, but who's to say 10, 15 years from now, that app gets mothballed or something like that, and then your unit is going to be a little bit in a gray area there. Also, the computer software updates, you can plug this thing into your computer to update the softwares, which is really, really nice. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, so you don't have to worry about it auto updating and messing anything up. But if you opt that you want to update to the latest, software that they have that may include some extra features or bells and whistles, you could opt to do that. So there's tons of great features packed into this unit. So now let's talk pros and cons. So let's first start off with the pros. The biggest pro that I would give it is that it's a pretty quick system. It's smart learning, as we talked about with that AI built into it. It's a really unique system in that it kind of learns and adapts and becomes more efficient with time. Also, the touchscreen display, I just kind of talked about that. I really like the fact that it doesn't rely on an app for long-term use. Also, I feel like this is a very easy to use unit. It does have a little bit of a learning curve at first, but once you get used to it, it's really simple, really straightforward, and really intuitive. Another huge positive is that switching powders is pretty easy. Whenever you go from something like Varget to something like Rotumbo or something, you're able to switch powders, and you're also able to go from, say, like a 30 grain load all the way up to a 40 or 50 grain load, and you don't have to manually adjust anything like you had to do on, say, an Autotrickler V2 or V3 or something like that. So it is really nice. Also, we talked about the easy software updates, and we also talked about the ladder mode before. Those are both pros that I'm going to throw in there. Now let's take a minute to get into some of the cons of the unit. So getting into some of the cons of the unit, the first thing I'll say is that it's newer. It hasn't necessarily been proven. We've already talked about that in today's video. Also, this is a unit that's made overseas and imported into the United States. There is a certain amount of lead time for a unit like this. If you order it, it's going to kind of depend on when you're watching this video, but generally expect several months before you're going to get your unit, because they are back ordered to a certain extent, and also whenever it does ship, it's coming from overseas, so it takes a little bit of time. Probably the biggest con that we've yet to really talk about in today's video is going to be the price point of the unit. So the Supertrickler V2 is going to come in at $750, and it utilizes the FX120i scale just like an Autotrickler would, but that FX120i scale is going to cost you another $600 or $700 or so. So it's about a $1,400 give or take all set up unit, which is very, very expensive. Another huge con is going to be that learning curve at first. So once you get this thing in and once you start using it, there is a little bit of a learning curve to get used to using the system. You do have to sort of start to understand the AI, sort of start to get a profile built before you could start loading super efficiently. I generally tell people about 50 to 70 charges before your profile starts to get refined enough to the point where I would start loading with it. You could take it and right off the rip start loading with it, but what you're going to find is the first charge is probably going to way overthrow. Your second charge is probably going to way underthrow and take forever to spool up to where it needs to be. And then that profile is going to start to get refined after about 10, 15, 20 charges or so. And then if you let it go a little bit longer, like I said, 50 to 70 charges is what I'd recommend. It really starts to refine it, and then that's to the point where you're going to get 7 to 10 second give or take charges. So the learning curve at first is definitely something that's there. The last con that I'm going to say is the ability to empty it. So emptying it, you basically lift the unit up, and there's a little tab on the bottom that you use to empty out the powder measure. It's not the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's very tight in there, so you're going to have to shake it around to make sure you get every single kernel out of there. For precision use, you want to make sure that you get it empty. That way you don't mix powders, even if it's a couple kernels. So, for some people, that's going to be something that's a big con to them. But I feel like, shaking it around a little bit, tilting it takes a little bit of time, and it's not the best way, in my opinion, to unload your powder, but it's definitely a way of doing it. But I am chalking it up as a con here. So now that we talked features, now that we talked pros, cons, who it's for, who's not for, I want to give my overall thoughts and opinions having used it. As I said earlier in the video, I've used it predominantly to load for my 6BR, which is with Hodge and Varget, and then recently I switched to Vitavori N150. And for those powders, it's been really, really consistent. Like I said, generally, it's probably closer to that 5 to 8 second charge range. Every once in a while, I'll get a 10 or 11 second charge, and every once in a while, I'll get sub 2 second charges, which is absolutely crazy. And as far as overthrows, I mean, I'll get one about every 1 in 20. I do feel like it likes Vitavori N150 a little bit better than it likes Varget, but for the most part, it works pretty good with both. I've also used it for H4350, and I've also used it for stuff like CFE 223. And with those powders, it works pretty good. With the ball powder, it is a little bit weird because of how fine the powder is, and I honestly wouldn't use it much for CFE 223, just given what that powder is kind of used for. But I wanted to try it out, and it seemed to work pretty all right with both of those. In terms of actually living with the unit and using it, I feel like it's a pretty easy unit to use. I could definitely see why somebody would buy one of these, and if they don't have the patience to, as I said, give it the 50 to 70 throws at the beginning to let it to build a profile, they could get very frustrated with it early. I feel like if you're going to pick up this unit, you have to understand that you have to give it a minute to build that profile, and then once you build that profile, you're good to go. I mean, if you switch powders, you're going to have to build a profile for every powder, but once you have the powders that you use on a regular basis, those profiles are going to be saved in there. So if you go from Varget to N150 to H4350, back to Varget, back to N150, and you have all those profiles, it's going to be as simple as pressing a button. There's no need to adjust a bulk throw setting like you had to do on the Autotrickler V3 system or something like that. There's no need to hand adjust anything like that. You just put in your powder, select it, tell how much charge weight you want to throw, and then you're off to the races. Like I said, there's definitely a learning curve with this unit, but from my experience, it's been a pretty solid unit. At first, it was a little bit weird, I'll be completely honest, but as I've got used to it, as I've used it more, as I've got more comfortable with it, it's honestly something that I'm absolutely ecstatic that I own. I was reluctant to get rid of my Autotrickler V3, even though a lot of people have asked me about it, and I still am not getting rid of my Autotrickler V3 for the time being. But I will say my Autotrickler V3 sat in a box for the last couple months because the Supertrickler has honestly kind of blown me away. And I thought about setting up my Autotrickler V3 on another scale and maybe getting the Ingenuity for it and running them side by side. But the Supertrickler is so quick that honestly, I feel like I don't even need that. I showed you guys some clips along the way of me actually loading ammo. And the way I load is I let the Supertrickler do its job. I dump it into a case that's on a loading block. And then I put the pan back on the Supertrickler, and as I'm waiting for it to do that, I'll grab a bullet, put it on my case, and seat my bullet. And generally, by the time I seat that bullet and put it in my ammo box and come back, it's done, if not done in a second or two from me doing that. So I'm able to keep up with this unit, and it's able to keep up with me, I should say. And honestly, I don't know how much of an advantage it would be for me to run 2 powder measuring systems, given how fast this one is and how good it works. So overall, so far, I got to give it a thumbs up. I will say I'm curious to see long-term how this thing works. I'm also curious to see what Supertrickler is going to come out with in the future. I know they're working on some add-on things for this unit. There's talk of some systems where your Supertrickler will work in conjunction with this hopper that's going to basically auto dump powder into cases. So essentially you'll have like a loading block set up with it, and it'll throw your charge, and then the system will take your cup down and dump it into the case. I don't know how much I would trust that. It would definitely take a little bit of me watching it work before I would actually use that. But I will say that it's really innovative, the things that they're doing. They're pushing the envelope, and it seems like the folks over at Supertrickler keep trying to make this unit better. Some people get frustrated because they're constantly making updates and constantly making revisions to it. But just like your car, every year there's a little bit different things. And if you're not moving the needle forward, you're kind of going backwards in today's market. So the fact that they keep pushing ahead, the fact that they keep trying to make it better is something that makes me kind of happy that bought onto the product and happy that I'm along for the ride to a certain extent. So, guys, if you got anything to ask, definitely feel free to post it down in the comment section below. If you want to share your experiences with the Supertrickler, I'd love to hear that as well. Guys, as always, remember to like, share, subscribe. Go take a look at some of my other videos. I make these videos purely for your entertainment and educational purposes. So the more support I get for these videos, the more encouragement I have to make more videos. Guys, as always, remember to train hard, shoot fast, and most importantly, be safe. God bless.